Mm-hmm. So please give us some lesser-known examples, if you have them handy, of some people trying to live off others by privilege or by force.
Well, sure. I mean, the Soviet Union was, sort of the classic example. I mean, the jokes abound among the people there. One of the popular jokes among the people were, well, we pretend to work and they pretend to pay us.
Right.
And another joke. This was from Romania. Guy finally saves enough money to buy an automobile, so he goes down to the car dealership and he says, well, I finally saved enough money. I'd like to buy an automobile. And the dealer laughs and says, well, come back in 12 years and you can pick it up. And the man says, well, should I come in the morning or the afternoon? And the dealer laughs again and he says, what does it matter? It's 12 years. And he says, well, yes, I know, but I have a dental appointment that day too. These sort of examples are very telling, because what they reveal is this, that the rulers in those places were living like leeches and parasites off the populace, and basically sucking them dry over time. And and of course, this sort of elitism is common throughout the world, and unfortunately, it's the direction that we're heading in America as well.
So let's switch gears here for a minute. So far, we've been talking about the importance of private property, production, and trade. Let's start talking about the nature of human action and what this teaches us. By the way, folks, this next section is going to introduce to you all the all-important work of Ludwig von Mises, who actually wrote the book Human Action. So let's start with the basics. Humans act. What more does this teach us?
Well, I think what it teaches us is something about who we are. And I like the way that Mises begins his book. He begins talking about us in this particular way. We are all self-aware, conscious of who we are, conscious of our purposes, and that we have ends, and we're volitional creatures who are aiming to accomplish our ends. And so...
Would you explain this word, volitional?
Yeah, volition just means we have our will. We will to accomplish the ends that we desire. And so there's a self-determination to all of us that my purposes in life are not your purposes, Michael, or Zoe's purposes, but we each have our own. And really, because we're structured that way, and we're also social, in fact, the differences between us allow for that socialization between ourselves and the interaction that we need to really best accomplish our ends. And so what economics is all about is this cooperative approach to the accomplishment of our ends.
So we think, we plan, we act. Do we act randomly, or do we act with a purpose?
No, we act with purpose. It's not random at all. We're always aiming to achieve our purpose. In fact, we'll never act in ways that we don't think will achieve the purpose. And Yuri Maltsov tells a really nice story here of a young man, and this was during the 1980s, in the period of Gorbachev and Glasnost and Perestroika. And, it was the new freedoms. And so this young man was really excited about the new freedoms and set out a plan. His plan was he went out and purchased a baby pig, and he was going to raise this pig to fruition. Well, the day had arrived, the pig was ready to be slaughtered and the meat sold in the market, so he slaughtered the pig and set off for the market. And, Yuri says, you've never seen a young man more excited than this young man as he set off to go sell his pig and to make a profit on it. And he said, but that evening he was walking down the street, and this same young man was up under a street lamp drunk with a bottle of vodka by his side. And he knew he wasn't given to that kind of behavior, so he went up and he asked him, he says, what are you doing here? Why are you drunk at this time of the evening? And the young man looked up at Yuri and he said, well, it really didn't go so well today. He said the first thing that had happened when I got to the market is I ran into the health inspector, and he took a third of the pig, and he took the best parts. After that, I had to bribe a couple of the police officers even to get into the market, and, of course, they took the best of what was left. And after I'd paid fees and paid rent for a slot in the market to sell what I had left, all I had was enough to sell to make money enough to buy this bottle of vodka, and it's just about gone. And so right there, you know, this young man's not ever going to do it again.
Right.
He's not going to raise another pig. So production just ceases. You know, incentives do matter.
Right. So we're going to come back to that topic in a broader sense at another time, because you're touching on a number of things that I would love to expand on, but we're going to run out of time. And I wanted to ask you to build on this idea of, you know, that we act with a purpose, but you also mentioned that only individuals act, that there isn't such thing as a collective. Could you explain that a little bit?
Well, yeah, we might act in unison together, but we do so by, you know, forming an association or a group. But the group always is made up of the individuals who join the group. It's not ever, the group doesn't have an existence of its own apart from the membership, apart from the individual people who make up the group. And so action always at a root level goes back to the individual. And Mises referred to that as, you know, economics as radically, methodologically individualist.
Okay. Well, I want to establish these points a little bit more. We're going to have to wait for just another minute. We're going to take a brief break, folks, and then we'll be back talking with Dr. Paul Cleveland. And this is Radio Free Market. Stay with us. We'll be back in just a minute. Welcome back, everyone. This is Radio Free Market, and I am your host, Michael McKay, and I have Dr. Paul Cleveland and Zoe Russell with us today. And we were just talking about these basics of human action, Paul, and you were laying these out so nicely that only individuals act, and you were saying that there's no such thing as a collective, and we only act toward desired results. But we also must choose to act from among competing options, because we can't do everything. You know, why is that?
Well, one, I don't think we have really many other choices. I mean, our self-awareness of ourselves and our self-determination lead to this point. You know, there are some people in the academy who try to reduce human action down to the level of the animal and down to herd mentality. But the problem with that is their theory makes no sense. Or, you know, because they conceive of themselves as being able to rise above the herd and to lead the herd. Mm-hmm. Well, if all people were in the herd, aren't they in the herd? Mm-hmm. But if they were in the herd, how did they rise above the herd to be able to know it better than anybody else? You know, that's an irrational position to take. Mm-hmm. And that's really a problem in the academy today, because it's taken the academy in this direction of postmodernism that has thrown logic out the door, and has reduced it down to, you know, this sort of this mindless game of, well, whatever feels good, and that's not where that's not suitable for creatures who are intelligent and who have minds, and we can think and reason and understand the world in which we live.
Zoe, during the break, you made a point. You want to ask that or make your point?
So is that why a lot of other economic schools of thought tend to focus on math and models instead of human action?
Oh, absolutely, because if you think about it, utilitarianism is of that sort. It reduces human action down to the level of being nothing but a calculation. One of the things, and this really bothered me early on, when I was in graduate school at Texas A&M, I worked for an experimental economist, and anyway, it was my job to work with his test subjects, which were rats in Skinner boxes. And now we showed, or he showed, that rats are pretty good utility maximizers, according to utility theory. And that kind of bothered me for a long time, but then I finally figured it out. Well, yeah, what else would they be? They're animals. That's the way animals behave. The only problem is people aren't animals in that sense. We rise above the animal world in our self-consciousness and and the way in which we interact with the world in ways rats never would. You know, because if I left the doors to the Skinner boxes open, those rats would never engage in any kind of trading relationships.
Right. We can conceive of additional choices.
Right. And in ways that they can never do. And so really that kind of reductionism is a bit of a problem in the for some economists, I think.
Well, folks, we're going to have to wrap this up today. I want to thank Dr. Paul Cleveland and our special commentator Zoe Russell for being with us and talking about these basic principles of how free people and free markets grow or are lost. We are going to continue the show at a later date, and we'll get Dr. Paul on the show with us again. Until that time, please listen to us again. We'll be on next week. And so until that time, you can visit us on the web at radiofreemarket.com. This is Michael McKay, and I want to thank you all for listening. Thank you, and good day.